Strategy, technology, demos, and stories from Adobe Consulting. This is the Experience Lab podcast. Well, here we are again. Welcome to the Experience Lab podcast. I'm Chris with Adobe Consulting. And today my guest is going to be Matt Gilligan. And Matt's been at Adobe, as he'll tell you, for 13 years. And he has been with Adobe Analytics, everything from implementation to strategy, end to end, from Adobe Analytics all the way through to the new world of Customer Journey Analytics, or CJA, as it sits on Experience Platform. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He knows a lot, and you're going to hear a lot from Matt today, which is really fantastic. So buckle up, and I hope you enjoyed this interview today, and then I will see you at the end. All right. So, hey, Matt,
Hey, Chris.
how's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. So, I guess why don't we start with who the heck are you and what do you do for a living? And then we'll go from there.
That sounds great. Yeah, my name is Matt Gilligan. I'm a principal consultant in our data and insights practice in Adobe Consulting. I've actually been in consulting now for 13 years with Adobe. I'm in various architecture and analytics roles. Prior to Adobe, I spent about 12 years on the client side in various analytics management roles.
And this is why I wanted to talk to you because you've been here from the whole evolution. You've seen Adobe Analytics become AEP and Customer Journey Analytics, and you've been with that evolution since the very beginning. That's why we're talking. So let me start here. Analytics versus Customer Journey Analytics. So what's the difference? Like, what is CJA and why is it not Adobe Analytics, and what's the point?
Yeah, that's great. Great way to start this off. The first big difference I'll say is that Customer Journey Analytics is a tool that really provides that 360-degree view of customer behavior. So, if we think of Adobe Analytics and having like digital and mobile app analytics, those are obviously really confined to those channels. There's the ability to bring in some, other data integrations into analytics, but it's definitely not that robust customer 360 that clients have been asking for, right? So we want to be able to see Matt or Chris go to the web, and then what happens when they maybe visit, a retail store for that vendor, and then what if they make a call to the call center, that sort of thing. We really want to be able to link all of that data together for specific users and be able to understand the full customer journey. So the way that CJA does that is really by unioning like various data sets. So again, let's just use that web kind of retail and call center example, right? We'll stick with that. And we're really unioning those data sets together in Adobe Experience Platform, and then for CJA to consume on a common known person ID. So our ID generally in digital with Adobe Analytics, we have a cookie ID, our ECID, our Experience Cloud ID, and we may even have an authenticated ID in digital available for the web. But really, we want, a common person ID for that web behavior that we can also link to, in our example, that retail and call center data. And then we're able to get that really kind of robust picture and unlock, a lot of capabilities, things like multi-channel attribution, right? True customer segmentation, being able to create customer segments based on any and all of the data that you might have available in Adobe Experience Platform that again CJA can then consume. So that's the first big difference, is that this is kind of the multi-channel, multi-data set view of customers.
You gotta
Uh,
love this guy. You ask a simple question and you get a master class. So okay, so you're not just looking at events from web or events from mobile. You're taking the behavior from any channel at which you can track events and you're unioning all that together. So now I can look at the whole customer journey. But then the other half of it is the profile part, right? So
right.
with Adobe Analytics, it's all anonymous, but now we're in this AEP world where you've got profile attributes about the person as well as the events about everything that they did.
Exactly right, Chris. So if we think, and you captured that perfectly. So if we think of looking at a customer journey, that's obviously events sequenced over time, right? Like I was on the web today at noon, then I was in a retail store tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And that's exactly what those eventing data sets allow us to do. And then to your point on the profile data sets, that's incredibly key to the whole picture as well, right? In addition to the sequencing of events, we can bring in things like all of that rich CRM data about customers, right? So what's my customer loyalty segment? What's my LTV? What are various propensity model scores? Things like that. I had a mobile customer, right, very recently, and we had hundreds of attributes around what kind of device do they have and what kind of account plan do they have and things like that. So you're able to create really rich segments and actually even audiences in CJA that you can send back to AEP to activate on with maybe an email campaign or a push messaging campaign. And you're able to create these really rich segments and do really deep analysis on subsets of customers, right? So it's not just, hey, how do various customers move from web to retail to call center, but it's how do my, 5G iOS customers move from web to retail to call center and things like that. So that's a great call out.
Yeah, and I love that full circle, right? Like it's literally 2 clicks to say, "Hey, I found something. I've gone down this rabbit hole within whatever dashboard I'm building. Go activate it back," and it will automatically create you a segment based on everything you just filtered down to, and then kick it back over for activation. And in some cases, it's data that you don't even have to have on profile. You just have to have it in the lake for CJA. So it's kind of a bit of a cheat in some ways.
That's right. Exactly. Incredibly powerful. And, we're really, the feature's not that old, came out last year, and we're starting to really see some great customer adoption now and some really clever use cases, like you're mentioning. So I think it's going to be, a really important feature going forward.
Well, if we didn't know what CJA was 5 minutes ago, we do now. Okay, so Matt, what do you see from customers who are making that transition from Adobe Analytics to customer analytics? Because the data collection's different, the structure might be different. What does that look like? And then what are some of the challenges that we should be looking out for?
Yeah, sure. So good question. So there's really like, we have like you say, like legacy Adobe Analytics customers, right, that may have had the tool for 10, even 20 years. They're excited to move to CJA. They're a little reticent maybe about moving to CJA. It's a pretty big change, right? They have a lot of history with Adobe Analytics. And there's really like two or three things that I'm seeing with customers. I'm actually engaged in six of these analytics to CJA migrations right now concurrently. So definitely some commonalities that I'm observing. One is that some clients are not really anticipating that there might be, desirable or even necessary implementation changes to data collection as part of moving from AA to CJA. So, simple example, they may want to do certain things like, again, link that web data to say call center data, but they're not really, since they've never done that before, right? They're not really realizing that they either don't capture an authenticated ID or they have very low coverage in their authentication and they need to encourage users to log in or something like that. Or they just may be on very legacy app measurement data collection and CJA is just part of a change that they're making and they have activation use cases that are going to require more real time, data collection and ability to activate. So see that a lot where they think it's going to be okay. This is kind of a lift and shift, and I'm just going to be collecting analytics data in AEP now and have CJA. And then there's this really kind of underlying change that they need to make.
And thinking of that as a lift and shift is really missing the opportunity. You just bought new technology with a whole ton of additional capabilities. This is your moment to take advantage of those new capabilities and start to adopt them. Now, granted, there are times when a lift and shift makes sense so that you can get over there quickly, start using it, and then you can iterate from there. But there are often times when there's just something that needs to be done for the new solution, and now's the time to get it done while you're in that switch mode and while you have your old solution to fall back on for a bit while you get through it.
Exactly. And I think you and I have even seen that together on a couple of engagements. I think that's well put. Let me mention one or two other things that I come across.
Yeah.
And I think you and I have spoken about this before as well, but another challenge can be analytics data feeds. So some clients have been using pretty advanced data science applications with their clickstream data, with their analytics clickstream data. And there's really no perfect analog for that in CJA. And it can be a really big hangup for some clients. There are, and this is important and why it's, I think engaging with Adobe Consulting during these migrations is helpful because there are mitigating tools and options that we can look at for getting close to an analytics data feed, but there is no perfect substitute. So it's something our product team is definitely focused on. And then the last thing, and we can move on, but the last thing we see is, there's enterprise clients, right, who have thousands or tens of thousands of analysis workspaces, segments, calculated metrics, things like that, right? I'll just refer to them as, assets. And, when they're thinking of moving from AA to CJA, naturally they're like, well, what do I do with these 10,000 things that we've built over the last 10 years. And, fortunately, in Q1 of this year, we came out with a new API based method for kind of transferring assets from Adobe Analytics to customer journey analytics. But it is definitely still a big task that I find we need to kind of work with customers to help prioritize, what we're going to move, really be able to audit what actually gets used and things like that. So I would say those three, the implementation, the data feeds, and the migration of the analytics assets. So the most common things we're running into.
And I like that last one because it's the honest reality of changing to a new piece of critical software, right? Is part of moving over to AEP and CJA and the other app services is you're getting all this new capability, you're gonna collect all this new data, but it's also gonna be structured differently, and it's going to exist in a completely different form, which may mean that some of your reports don't work the way they used to, but it may also mean you have to just completely reimagine them, which is
That's
part of
right.
the reason why you're switching is so that you could build newer, better reports. And every once in a while, that reality just kinda hits us in the face a bit of, "Oh, yeah, there's actually work here that I have to do to get through this."
Yeah, 100% absolutely right. And, I think generally once we start collaborating with clients and like kind of try and take the stress out of that situation and explain like that the net gains you're getting are so overwhelmingly positive versus like some of the hurdles you're going to face in that migration that it kind of soothes things a little bit and we're able to work through that generally pretty well.
All right, Matt. So I changed into my jammies and I got myself a pillow and blanket, and I'm going to curl up in front of the fireplace here. And I'm going to get you to tell us a story because I asked you to try to bring a bit of a customer story with us just to sort of paint a picture as to what this looks like. So why don't you take it away and tell us something interesting?
Will do, Chris. So this actually relates to one of the challenges we just talked about, right? So I've been working with this global telco company for the past several months on an AA to CJA analytics, customer journey analytics migration. And this particular company is the parent of four brands or lines of business that span a couple of product categories. So the original scope was for Adobe Consulting to actually come in and do that lift and shift we just talked about of two brands from analytics to CJA. But as we were coming in and doing discovery with the client, kind of discovered that one of the really C-level objectives of this parent organization, if you will, is to really start cross-selling between these four brands. So it definitely makes sense from a marketing standpoint. So then once we learned that, part of what we do in these analytics to CJA migrations is we do a really thorough assessment of a client's, a customer's current state analytics architecture and the data collection. And after doing that, understanding the business context a little bit better, we really realized that doing a lift and shift of two of these brands is not what this customer needs. Right. And so we had to really go back and revisit it because What these guys really need was a re-implementation of all four of their brands with the goal of having, getting as much harmonization as possible in their data collection, in their data model, right, between these four. Because right now, each of the four brands has a separate authenticated ID, right? A separate account ID. They're four different businesses. And they had started to think about like, maybe we should come up with a common ID across the brand so everybody has, one account ID across the same account ID across the four. And we really encourage them to kind of accelerate that work. And then also think about using CJA really not just for each of their four lines of business, but obviously where this is going is bringing them all together in one CJA connection so that we can see how effective their marketing is going to be for cross sell, right? Like how are users moving between these different brands and what does the kind of full customer profile look like for this parent organization? And we actually just finished completely redesigning the analytics data collection into AEP and a very kind of MVP data model kind of thing, I think, which will serve us well to get going here.
You see, this is why I like working with you, Matt Gilligan, because you have a very good understanding of the realities of implementing technology. And you're not afraid to tell us when it's going to be hard. And we know there's a benefit. We know that there's green pastures on the other side, but sometimes you've got to get through a hard part of the implementation because you're trying to get something new and you've got a lot of tech debt and you've got a lot of old data and old ways of working. And I think having people like you around who've been through that in the trenches, as they say, I think is amazing. So it's been amazing to talk with you. But any parting words or anything you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, I think that's it, Chris. It's been great to chat today. So thanks for having me on and looking forward to working with you again soon.
Thanks for being on. Did I not tell you that Matt Gilligan is a knowledgeable guy? My goodness, he knows a lot about analytics and CJA. He's been here for 13 years. I like having conversations like that and hearing about the realities of implementing tech. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He tells it like it is. And when it comes time for project work, that's the guy that I want by my side is helping me navigate the realities of projects like that so that we can get through the hard stuff gracefully to get to that utopia that we're looking for on the other side of a project. So thanks again for listening. Like, subscribe, do all the things. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and I'll see you next time on the Experience Lab podcast. This has been the Adobe Experience Lab podcast.